The 1986 Molson Indy Toronto would end up being a very important race. It was the 8th race of the 1986 season, but would also end up being the 100th race for kart. More importantly though, it would be the first at Exhibition Place in the streets of Toronto, marking the first race in the Toronto area since 1978, a race won by Danny Ungaius at Mosport. Strangely enough, despite this race being important, no one really cares about it. However, as I've done so often on this channel with Forgotten History, I want to take a deeper dive into this race. This is a story of the inaugural race in the streets of Toronto, the 1986 Molson Indy Toronto. Emerson Fittipaldi would start this race from pole position with a time of 1 minute 0 seconds .312. Bobby Rahal would start alongside him. Dale Coyne would end up being the only DNQ after qualifying nearly 10 seconds slower than Fittipaldi's qualifying time. Before the race even started, there would be issues. Emerson Fittipaldi had trouble starting his car, but would eventually get fired and take the start of the race. To the actual start now, and your top two would stay the same, with Fittipaldi and Rahal remaining first and second. Towards the back, however, it was trouble for 7th place starter Jacques Villeneuve Sr., who would hit the wall outside of turn 10 on lap 1. This of course being racing before the 1990s, the race would remain green even with a safety truck going out to retrieve Villeneuve's broken car. There would also be trouble for the machinist union cars of Mike Nish and Jose Garza, with Nish being well off the pace and eventually being lapped on lap 4, and Jose's car going on strike on lap 7. Rick Mears would run into problems with him having to pit 2 laps in a row, first for a scheduled pit stop to replace a blistered tire, and second for a loose wheel. Jeff Brabham would then run into problems, breaking a shift linkage on lap 18 and crawling into the pit shortly after. On lap 25, the only yellow would come out after Mike Nish barreled into the tire barriers on the outside of turn 1. 26-year-old Nish would break his ankle in what was his final IndyCar race. Nish then had a solid career racing land speed record cars, but his very brief IndyCar career was less than impressive. Under the yellow, Emerson Fittipaldi and Bobby Rahal would pass the pace car, subsequently getting stop-and-go penalties and ruining their races. The worst damage would be done to Rahal, who would serve a 1-lap penalty after the race was restarted. Al Unser Jr. would then take control of the race, leading the next 38 laps. In this stretch of the race, we would have another 4 retirements. On lap 51, Randy Linier's suspension failed. 10 laps later, one of Roberto Guerrero's brake rotors shattered. Then Michael Andretti would crash 7 laps later, shortly followed by Roberto Moreno's engine failing. For the rest of the race, the lead would swap between Al Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan, and Bobby Rahal, who had somehow managed to make up the 1-lap gap under green. He would end up leading 15 of the last 25 laps on his way to win the inaugural Molson Indy Toronto. Danny Sullivan would finish second, and Mario Andretti finished third. 36 years later, after a 2-year break, the race is returning this weekend. But although the track layout, the cars, the drivers, and the series looks totally different than it did back in 1986, I hope you can understand the historical significance of the first running of the Molson Indy Toronto. Thank you for watching, and have a great afternoon.